just seeing the domestic realities. There's not the glitz and glam of a typical stripper portrayal. We're talking about having dreams and having interior worlds. I think that adds some complexity to an often flattened narrative of who we are.
Welcome to YAS Podcast, where sex workers, artists, and advocates talk about the realities of the industry. You're listening to a show on YAS Network, a collection of podcasts created through YAS Work. Learn more at yaswork.org. Hi, everyone. This is YAS Podcast. I'm AM Davies. I'm your host for today's podcast. We need to say that now because we have different hosts, and that makes me so happy. So thank you so much for being here with us. We have some recurring guests, and we have a new guest. And I would like to just get to it. I don't like to waste any time. We're going to do an intro of each person so you can get to know everyone's voice. They're going to tell us their name, their pronouns, and if they identify as a sex worker or not. And then we're going to talk about this amazing movie that these people made together. So let's start at the top. Nats Honey, will you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nats Honey. I am the current president of Strippers United. I'm also the vice president of YAS Work. I stay working. My pronouns, she, her, they, and I identify as a sex worker.
Lovely. Selena?
Hi guys, I am Selena. I am a writer, former pres of Strippers United, and current wellness director at SU. I am a sex worker and I have done most sex work.
And Julia. Hi.
Hi, my name is Julia. I am a filmmaker. I don't identify as a sex worker. I'm a lover of sex workers. My pronouns are she, her.
Nice.
I forgot mine, they, them.
Thank you. Perfect. Thanks for getting that in there. Yeah. So hi, everyone. Are we so excited about today? Today is a big day.
Today is a busy
Definitely.
day.
Yeah. Today is a busy day. Who wants to tell everyone what today is?
Nats, you go ahead.
I knew you were going to say that. Okay, so we're doing double duty.
To know the day.
Okay. Later on today, we're having the international virtual screening For the Love of Strippers. We're really excited for that. We've already had a little smaller one nationwide a couple of weeks ago, and that went really well, and we're really excited. And we're just going to be talking about the film all year. We're going to talk about international sex worker rights because it also coincides on that particular holiday today. And we're also doing this podcast on that very same day. So you guys will see it in the future. But currently, that's where we're at.
Yes. In the very near future. Yeah. Today is International Sex Workers' Rights Day. It is the international community release of For the Love of Strippers, which is a movie created by Nats, Honey, Selena, and Julia. When I say created by, collectively, Nats, Honey, Selena, you're the stars. Julia, director, producer. Can you name all the roles you had, Julia?
I'm the executive producer, but I had some very hardworking producers, including Liz, who was the producer on the film. I definitely can't take credit for all the incredible producing that she did. And also Selena and Nats Honey were creative consultants and did a lot of work as far as brainstorming,
Awesome.
a lot of the shoots and how to shoot and just vibes.
Nice. So they definitely helped shape, like they basically were consulting and being the center of the film. So they had some sort of creative control.
Yeah, creative consultant, is that an actual job? That's just what I felt like they were doing. So I was like, let's do creative consultant. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like I would love to be hired as a creative consultant just for the people out there. But,
plug when you can.
I'm like, that sounds fun. But just meaning, especially how we're shooting things. And I think like one particular shoot comes to mind is like when we were doing reenactments of how they would be dancing, right? So we did this one shoot where we just did like beautiful photography of both of them dancing, hanging out, kind of beauty shots. And so we consulted of like, how would you be doing this? Or what kind of lighting or what would the vibe be for this?
Yeah. Of course, Nats and Selena would know that. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of kind of creativity that's left up to me, but in documentary in particular, the way that I like to make films, it's like to me, it would be insane to be imposing 100% of my vision on top of someone else's story that is not mine. In my mind, there needs to be some sort of collaboration, which is where that role came from.
Nice. And what, Nats, Honey, Selena, you guys obviously have experience with lighting and making yourselves look fabulous, but was this a little different situation, or have you been on film sets before and been able to have that type of creative control?
I'm pretty sure lighting was probably more like in Selena's area. For me, I just know that I felt like I was included. I felt like my opinion was valued. I feel like I helped steer the direction in terms of what I was feeling, what I was going through, where I thought the community was headed. So I do think that we played a crucial part in the development of the film for sure. And I'm honored to be a creative consultant. And I hope I too am hired to do that again. That would be great.
What about you, Selena?
Yeah, so I've helped run some video shoots before and done creative direction for things like for some Strippers United shoots, among other things.
Yeah.
And so I love handling lighting. I love thinking about color and staging. And so it was really nice to be included and to be treated as somebody who can have some expertise, because I think a lot of times in documentary, if you're the subject, you're relegated to a place where you are separate from the actual production of the thing that you're in, and you don't have very much creative say, and you don't get to really even know what's happening until the thing is done. And I felt really included in Julia's production, just the way that we were asked as things went along, if it felt right, if the final cut made sense, if there was something that they missed. And so that was really empowering, I think, especially with this subject, because sex work is such a difficult subject to represent well. Or I guess maybe it is not, but a lot of people don't do it well because they don't ask these questions. They like to make a lot of assumptions. And
Right.
so it is really nice that this was handled the way that it was and we were included.
That's really awesome. Yeah, because obviously I don't need to tell those of you that I'm talking to directly right now, but in general, for any audience members that don't know, sex workers don't get a say. And there's like loads and loads of media out there in the world about sex workers, even directly documentaries about sex workers that are where the subjects don't get to say. And not to say that sex workers are the only marginalized group of people that experience that, is really commonplace in general, but yeah, that is an ongoing issue. And so that sounds really cool. And the movie was amazing. We should tell people what the movie was about. Who would like to tell that story? A brief synopsis.
So it follows Selena and Nats over the course of 3 or 4 years.
Nice.
And as they are working in different ways to change the industry, and it's not as explicit as they're working on this one project that gets completed by the end of the film. I think that's too trite, right? It's because that's not how life is. And so instead, we drop into their lives at what ends up being this like pivotal turning point, partially in personal lives, partially in the industry. And just we see this push and the shift that's happening in the background of their lives and how they're contributing to it, and really leading a conversation about how we can change the industry and practices that have been going on for way too long.
Yeah. Nice. And I want to ask Nats and Selena, when Julia came to you with this idea and this project, like, what was your initial reaction? And also, what was your understanding? I want to know what you think inspired Julia to make this movie, because Julia's not a sex worker. There's no skin in the game for Julia. So first you had to trust, right? You had to trust this person, and you had to analyze the situation, and then you had to understand, why is this person wanting to do this project? I think that's a question a lot of us sex workers ask ourselves when people approach us. So I'd love to hear from you what that was like.
I am going to be brutally honest. I am already like that. I'm already questioning everyone's motive when it comes to their involvement with sex workers, and if they're passionate the way that I am passionate. That's what I didn't need to have those kind of questions. Instead, I trusted the source. Julia expressed to me that she had went to some of the local clubs here, made a couple of friends, she attended a couple of the virtual shows. So I knew that the route that they were coming in, it worked. Okay, that's good. And then the next question that I did propose was, if it changes, are you going to be a part of it? If everybody gets down on you for doing it and being involved with sex workers, are you going to then pivot, or are you really committed? And the answer was, I am truly committed. I want to understand what you guys are going through and also make it very clear to the rest of the world that this is what you guys have to experience and we should probably be doing something about it. Yeah, here we are 4 years later.
Yeah.
And for me, so I was introduced to Julia by Reagan. I'm pretty sure, yeah. And so Julia had gotten interested in 2020 because of the Cyber Clown Girls shows. And so she was like an outsider seeing this movement happening of strippers who were coming together to financially support each other through collectivized work, through creating this DIY cooperative out of nowhere. And she was interested in that story, interested in talking to us. And whenever we met, I think I'm more trusting than Nats, and for better or worse. But for me, I think a lot of times as a sex worker, you have to make really fast decisions about people. Like it's a yes or no, especially when you're handling clients. Like you're always assessing danger. And I guess to be a little, I don't know, not woo, but like I was a little bit like, you know what? I like her vibe. I think I trust this woman. Let's see what happens. And I feel like my instinct was good. I'm really glad that it was good. I feel Julia is such a wonderful person, and this has been a really wonderful experience.
Nice. I love that. It's beautiful. I agree. I had the same feelings about Julia in the beginning too.
Yeah, we should reveal at this point in the podcast, Am was also part of this project early on.
Yeah.
We talked so much, and and the reason that Am wasn't in the final film too is like I don't know, you can cut this out. This is up to you.
No, it's fine. We can talk about it. I moved.
Yeah, and I was funding everything myself at the beginning and was keeping it like focused on people in LA and the kind of the LA scene and the LA crew. And yeah, didn't have the funding to expand it. And I think that also answers the question of like, why isn't it longer? And I was just like, at the beginning, it was supposed to be a feature. Yeah. And I think financially, I had to make a choice. I had a kid and I had been spending my savings on shooting and was really invested. But then like my husband's always, it was keeping me up at night that the film was paused and like unfinished. And I needed to focus it and get it done in whatever way I could, but with the means that I had now that I had this like young baby. And so I just was like in the middle of the night when I was like, we need to just make it a short. We just need to focus on what we have and make it a short and get it out in the world. Do you remember, you guys, I called you both being like, I'm so sorry. We have to pause the film. I don't know how to continue it. And then called you back 6 months later. They've been through a lot with me. And I'm so sorry to do this. I need 1 second to hopefully pop a pacifier in. I'll be right back.
It's cool to be a mom. I wish we weren't so ashamed of it sometimes and made to feel like we always have to apologize for it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So we were just talking about a lack of funding for the project. You were having a baby. You had to scale down for several reasons, a lot of that having to do with funding. And Selena wanted to touch on a point about lack of funding for sex worker projects.
Yeah, I think a big part of this issue with funding is that we're telling the wrong topic, or the topic the wrong way for people who might want to fund this. The amount of money that goes into, for example, true crime documentaries about sex work, or documentaries about trafficking sex workers, and about just people who are doing sex work under duress or under awful conditions. There's always money for that. But whenever you have a narrative like this, where we are talking about empowerment, we're talking about choice, we're adding some complexity to the issue. Nats and I are here of our own volition. That kind of narrative doesn't fit very easily with a lot of funding opportunities. And so I guess I'm curious, Julia, if that speaks to you.
I mean, yes, totally. And I think it should be mentioned. Actually, I'm so sorry. He's still crying. I'm just going to bring him in here. I'm sorry.
It's
You're
okay.
good. Don't
It's okay.
apologize.
Everything's fine.
I have my milk supply. I have my pacifier. I have a bouncy chair. So anything that comes up, I can address without having to leave again. Honestly, this film, I've had 2 kids during the duration that it took me to make this.
Wild. You have kids faster than finish the movie. Incredible.
Yeah, which like that's a metaphor for like how hard it is to get.
Oh, it's so hard, especially if you're a mother. It's so hard. The world is not set up to be different.
It really is not. And you would think, yeah, 2026, we've come somewhere, but no. I think people like to say too, they're like, oh, we love a female director. We support women or mother. Oh, you're a mother. That's great, working mother. But then when it comes down to it, they're not going to hire you. They just like want to, because they don't want to deal with the fact that life is complicated. But the truth is that life is complicated no matter what your responsibilities are.
Yeah.
Like mothering is very visible, But like you have a bunch of other stuff. So I don't know. I feel like there's a long way to go for that.
We should all have more grace for each other.
Totally.
If we talk about funding and sex worker projects while you change the diaper, that's all good. Okay, great.
It reminds me of, do you guys ever listen to Chatty Broads?
No.
So Chatty Broads is like it's a podcast, and they had just had kids, and so they're just like dealing with the kids through the podcast, having to take nursing breaks and stuff like that. And they're like, if you hear baby chewing, that's the baby chewing.
I love that. What can we do? Life is life, and there's no use in pretending like we don't have to deal with these things. Okay, so while Julia's taking care of that, the baby situation, we were talking about a lack of funding for sex worker projects. Did we cover that all the way before we got?
Yeah,
we did.
the only thing that I had asked was just like how Julia felt about that, if she had thoughts.
We wanted to know how Julia felt about that.
And right. Julia, while we were recording, said some stuff while we were down on that topic.
Oh.
Which we will insert that clip right here.
I wanted to end that part of the conversation that we were talking about funding and how difficult it was to fund this project at the beginning, and that dictating how the project ended up being a short. But also, like, we were truly like saved at the end there by finishing funding and like being able to shoot the last few times and edit, and that was also was funded by someone who doesn't have any experience with sex workers, loved Nats and Selena, loved the footage, loved the story, loved like, this is like a human story. It doesn't have to be so other, right? Like,
we love doing this work, maintaining a platform for sex workers to tell their stories, entertaining and educating the public. If you love our podcast, please consider donating. We are now a 501c3, so your donations would be considered tax deductible. Go to yaswork.org/donate and easily send us some support to help keep this podcast going. That's yaswork.org/donate.
Remember, Selena, when we would go to a studio and there would be like a sound producer, right? And now I remember during the pandemic, I just did it from my bed. Like, I look back on it. At the time, I didn't think it was crazy. And I look back on it now, I'm like, you were recording multiple podcast sessions a week in your bed with one leg, like a full year. And like, it worked because people were listening.
Yeah. We were making things happen.
Yeah.
With what we had.
We had to during the pandemic, right? And that is part of when this movie was shot. Am I getting that right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You remember what year that started, the filming?
It was either 2020 or 2021, because I remember for so much of it, we were on Zoom calls with Julia, just
Yeah.
like talking to her, catching up on life. And she couldn't always be out here for various travel restriction reasons and
Yeah.
life reasons. But yeah, so much of what I guess you don't get to see are all those Zoom calls that we all had.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and what I find interesting too, and I'm thinking about the moments in the movie, is like what we all were going through at the time because we were all working together as Strippers United and what we were going through individually because of what was happening because of the pandemic and everything just shifted, right? And so I'm just having flashes when I was watching the movie, and I'm seeing it now in a different way, which is like you two trying to figure out what life is going to be like with this new way of the world being the way it is. And Sesta Fosta being signed into law. Like we were just surviving, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot about this because it is like for the love of strippers, but Nats and I stopped dancing. Nats, you stopped before me, but I stopped, or I think you were.
Yeah, I haven't been inside of a club since the pandemic. I feel like I was pushed out after AB5. I haven't been
Yeah.
back inside of a club.
Same. Yeah, I also felt pushed out. I got pushed out of my home club after AB5 passed and after my club actually started enforcing it. And there were just a lot of crackdowns on what we could do, and especially on tipping. And I mentioned in the documentary that my club was taking 50% of every dollar that I brought in. But by the time I left, they were taking more like 60% of every dollar that I had made. And they were still asking for the tip at the end of the night. And they were pressuring me to tip more explicitly and just generally threatening my job. And so I felt like it was just becoming more and more toxic. And the things that I'd really liked about the club were really gone at that point. Like, I really liked that it was a very intergenerational club. Like, I had colleagues who were 18 and I had colleagues who were in their 50s. And I liked that we were a more full service or like friendly club, and those of us who were doing extras were getting more pressure than ever. I liked that they were really generous with us for a while. They would pay for our drinks and our food. Like we could have whatever meals, however many meals we wanted while we were working. And they were like, that's fine. And they stopped that. All these little things to just build an atmosphere where we felt like important. We were losing all of that and they were taking more of our money. And my friends were getting fired because they weren't meeting the quotas. Before it was like if you weren't making that much money as a dancer, if you were just more of a stage dancer, it was fine. But with AB5, everybody had the pressure to sell dances, and especially people who are not that comfortable with like full contact or with dance rooms that are more private, like with closed curtains or stuff like that. Like they felt pressure to do things that were beyond their personal boundaries. And so, yeah, it just became really untenable for me. And I realized so much of the industry was turning to be that way. And so I just felt like I think as a dancer, you accept a degree of exploitation by the club in exchange for a certain amount of revenue and a certain amount of freedom in how you work. And like the amount of revenue and the freedom was going down and the exploitation was going up. And like it never feels amazing that you have to deal with those things, like that there is that tension. But it's like the devil's bargain that a lot of us make. And I don't know if you all feel that way because we're fighting for a different way of being, but that's my experience and how I've made sense of some of these things.
Thank you. Yeah. Nats, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that was a thorough thought all the way through. Yes. And because I know the club that Tin is referencing, like I understand it on a whole nother level. That was perfectly said.
Yeah. And also like we also lost a lot of the diversity in a general sense, not just age, but color. Nightclub is known for discrimination based on color, and other stuff, and body size.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are some things that, like, as sex workers, our audience of sex workers, like, I'm sure, can relate to so much of what you're saying, Selena, but what is important for civilians to know? Why are these stories, your stories, this movie, why is it important for civilians to be familiar with this movie and absorb the information?
I think the one word that I think of is visibility. I think that people need to be aware that we're not going anywhere. Like, sex workers have been around since the beginning of time, I'm assuming. Come on now. Come on. How did we all get here? Okay? So, we're not going anywhere. So, I think visibility and just not people need to see us, meet us where we're at and fight alongside with us, because we're not going anywhere. Join the party. That's what I think about that. Yeah.
Julia, you weigh in. I've been talking too much.
Yeah, and here's how I would pose the question to Julia. Okay, why is it important for civilians to understand this stuff? And what have your immediate civilian circle, how have they changed through this process?
I think that there's multiple parts to answer this question, and one thing that pops up, like, thinking about this question, is one of our EPs what talks about this a lot and wrote about this, about how she was watching one of our cuts, and one of our early cuts, probably a rough cut or something, and was with a friend, I believe. I got permission to tell this story for her, but it's not going to be as good that she's not telling it.
Okay.
But she was with one of her friends, and they were like, would you consider stripping? This is like listening to Nas and Selena. Would you ever consider it? And our EP, because our EP like loves to dance and all these things, and our EP was like, my instinct was to say no. And then I wanted to sit with, like, why was I having that thought? And then it started this whole kind of snowball of, like, of her kind of interrogating herself of, like, why was that initial reaction no? Because she loves all the things that are involved in it. And she realized that, like, it's because of the societal stigma. It's not about what the actual work is, because she loves dancing, loves feeling sexy, loves that attention, would love to make much more money quicker than in this slow ass documentary world. So there was all of these positives, and she was like, but then why was my initial thought no? And she was like, it was basically like live deconstructing, like, the way that society had taught her to think about the industry. And she's, oh my God, she called me. She's like, we got to make this movie. I'm like, I know, we're making it. It's like already happening. But I think that is a good example of how, in other ways, we think about the industry as civilians. It's, there's all this support for strippers, and stripping and strip clubs are, like, so fun, such a great part of, like, society. But then when we want to talk about, like, workers' rights for the strip clubs, all of a sudden, like, everything is crickets, everything is silent. There's much more support for even Amazon workers organizing, which is also great. But for me, I'm like, so what's the difference? Like, I don't want to pit Amazon workers against us, because we love that. We love any workers getting together and organizing. But to me, it's like, it was, as a civilian, it was so weird, honestly, just to be using real language, that we're advocating for all of these other kind of, like, industries and groups to have a better workplace, but we don't want strip clubs to have a better workplace. Like, why? What's in it for you for it not to be like that? To me, I just don't understand that. And yeah, hence the film is born.
I think we do a lot to, like, myth bust some of the misconceptions about who strippers are, what we think, how we engage with the industry, what our goals are. I mean, seeing Nats and I, like, being strippers, but also being community organizers, and Nats as a mother, and just seeing the domestic realities. There's not the glitz and glam of a typical stripper portrayal. We're talking about having dreams and having interior worlds. I think that adds some complexity to an often flattened narrative of who we are. And like Julia is saying, I hope that it works to do some destigmatization destigmatization work. I hope that people are questioning some of these initial reactions, like, I support strippers, but no, couldn't be me. I like what they do, but I would never. That kind of distancing. I hope that it adds more humanity to the lens in which we're painted. And it gives people some questions too, because I think what I've heard with people who watch the movie is, what can I do? Or I want to know more about some of these things. I want to know, did Nats ever buy the club? What about some of these goals that these dancers have? What else is going on? And I really love that it sparks curiosity.
Yes, me too.
What do you say? What can we say to people who are learning about our plight? It's just dawning on them today for the first time that something must be done.
Mm.
What do we tell them?
There's several orgs that they can become monthly donors to. There's always a fundraiser happening. I like to think that everyone knows a sex worker. So either find the first one, start at home, support that one, whichever way it may be. And then after that, find an organization, support that organization, maybe volunteer. There's ways where you can just step up. You just literally have to step up to the plate. And once you step up there, you'll see there's several different organizations based on, some are only for street-based walkers. Some only focus on BIPOC porn actresses and things like that. Sometimes it's all about the region that you're in. Maybe it's only for Portland area. Get it all, because there's a lot of orgs out there. Just get active.
Yeah, I think also on a more personal level, just participating in the conversation or creating the conversation. A lot of times people are scared to say that, or scared to bring up the topic. I think a lot of times, like, it's just not spoken about. And a lot of times I'll hear people quietly express support, whether it's clients who are like, I think what you're doing is amazing. Like a little whisper support, but what we need is like full throated support. What we need is people showing up at city halls, expressing support, or writing in about issues that affect us, or just talking to their friends whenever they make a joke at our expense, adding some complexity to the conversation. What did you mean by that?
That's a big one. Yeah. The
Speaking up for us
joking.
when we're not in the room. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I just got excited, Selena, because you had said create the conversation, not just be in conversation, which also definitely should be. But when you said create the conversation, I got excited because I have seen a little more of that very recently. But I would like to see more of that. Like how these men are like, oh, we need to uplift women, and how we have white activists talking about the Black communities, the brown communities, and then but then there's us, and it's like the one group that's consistently left out of the conversation that intersects with all of these other marginalized groups. And it happens so much on all sides of everything. And so just to talk more about sex workers and all of the different types of sex workers there are, to generate that conversation yourself as someone who's not a sex worker in support of, I don't know, I think that would go a long way if more people could have those conversations and understand the nuances by listening also. And that's for me a big one. Listen.
It reminds me of something that came up after one of our screenings that Selena and Nats were at. We were screening somewhere, and a film before us was about trafficking in sex work. And then they played our film right after this film. And it, like, the fury that I felt at that Q&A, Nats was amazing and so composed and just shut it down. And meanwhile, I was like internally like freaking out. But anyway, this is for another day. But the idea that, not that trafficking doesn't exist, but it wasn't how I would make a film. Let's just say that. It was about trafficking in sex work and shot in a different way. And I don't want to get into a critique of the film, but the point was that it was talking about trafficking. And then to set up like that precedent, and it had all of these stats that I'm not sure were correct, seemed way overblown, and then our film plays right afterwards. It's created this fog over our film of, oh, are these people being trafficked too? And they're just not addressing it. And it made me so angry because I think like a lot of the way, I think Selena and Nat's already mentioned this earlier in the conversation, it's like the way that we're talking about sex work, the way that we're talking about strippers in just civilian society. It's like, why is it always the true crime shows? Why is it always these trafficked, like, duh? And then it created this unnecessary drama that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just put like a shadow over screening our film, which is not that. And it created this innate question in the audience mind of, oh, were they just not addressing it like the other film addressed it? And that's also something for the civilian world to understand as well.
The difference between the two, consensual sex work and being trafficked. And yeah, they need to understand that. I think that trafficking orgs can do a better job of defining that, honestly. I think in order for civilians to understand that they're separate, I think that the trafficking orgs need to understand that sex workers actually choose the work when you choose to do it. Like, I consent to it, I am choosing it. However, if someone is next to me and they were trafficked, let's get them all the help that they possibly need. They are telling you they did not choose it. So let's listen to that. I think that there's room in the conversation for both perspectives, for both experiences. I don't think that they need to be lumped in together. I'm not a victim of my job. I am exploited in my job, but I'm speaking up about that. That's my action. I'm agreeing to all of that. I'm not being forced to do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of times this narrative works the way that these anti-sex trafficking organizations want it to, which is to say they equate all sex work with trafficking or with non-consensual sex work or exploitation. And there is, and they don't want that nuance. And I think what was alarming about the film before ours was that it was like funded by some of these religious-based no sex work is good sex work organizations. And it is really hard because that is what so many people see. That is like their introduction to sex work as a concept. But what I will say is that in recent years, I've seen so much more content that is painting these stories as more complicated than there's a victim, there is an unwanted situation. And it's really wonderful to be part of a film that is trying to add that. And I feel like it is successfully doing that.
I agree. And I think that was really poor planning on whoever did run of show that day.
Oh, it was awful. It was so bad.
But that's also something that whoever was running I don't think someone's, I'm going to ruin everyone's day. They're not thinking. That's why we're saying, will you please listen to us and hire us and pay us for the advice?
Yeah. No, it's definitely not intentional. You're exactly right. And that's
But it was harmful in the process, although unintentional, it was still harmful in the process. Yeah.
But I will say that something that was a positive outcome with that was that some of the people on the tech side, the composer, and the two composers for that short came up to us after, and they were really curious about our story. And we had given them something that they hadn't really thought about. You know, even though it was really unfortunate placement, there's some good that maybe came out of it.
Yeah.
I think that there's also a lot of complexity. Again, I'm keep using this damn word, but to that short, and I don't want to focus on it too much, but there are a lot of people who are in the abolitionist movement who are sex workers who have been trafficked. And there are ways to have this narrative and to have our story interact with a story like that. But unfortunately, a lot of times the storytellers are, like in the case of that other film, a person who's read one book about trafficking and wants to tell a story with a particular lens rather than trying to understand the humanity of this issue.
Yeah. Before we close out, I want to go over a couple of like little fun things from the movie. For instance, it's so funny. I've known you two for a very long time now, and it wasn't until I saw the credits in the movie, I was like, y'all have the same last name. I never, and I've always known both of your names, but for some reason I never noticed. Did you notice you had the same? You're
No,
not
I never
related.
think about it. No, it's
Right,
so funny. And
right.
it's hard to beat it because we're like the light skins of this organization. So,
That's the part that cracks me up the most. The fact
yeah,
that we both have curly hair and we're a lighter complexion.
yeah.
That's it for
For
me.
the record, you're not officially related, but
No.
yeah, people might think so if they don't know you.
According to the diaspora, we could be. We don't know.
So do you want to like fill in those threads of did Selena finish school and what happened with Artistplex? Do you want, or do you want to just leave them guessing where it is? Up to you.
Yeah, I'll share. So, I'm officially an associate therapist. I finished my school and I am doing some wellness events for Strippers United. If you're a sex worker looking for some mental health support, group style, please look out for our monthly meetings. But yeah, I'm going to be working as a therapist properly as soon as I find a job. Hopefully, by the time this podcast is out, I'll have a job.
Hopefully. Yeah, that's awesome.
And then in regards to Artistplex, I'm still at it. I am very busy with Strippers United these days, so that takes up a lot of time. And I do have a child. If you see the film, you'll know that takes up a lot of time, but I am getting everything done for sure. We've had a couple of art galas, which were very successful for Artistplex, and more things are in store for sure.
Nice.
And if people want to find Artistplex, they can.
Yes, I'm not going to dish out all this stuff. Maybe you have something you can point to, a link or I don't know,
Yeah,
put something
we'll
right
have both.
here. Okay, yeah. There's merchandise. If you wanted to support us, you can totally go buy some of our merch, support us. You can become I think we have a newsletter link at the bottom of our website. Check that out. Hit up our Instagram. Check out some of the old footage from our past events. Come get to know us. We'll be around.
And Julia, how about you?
Since the film ended, I have had another kid. I have a fresh one that's been interrupting this podcast. And I'm in the pitching phase of a couple projects that I'm really excited about that hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, we'll all be funded. No.
What in closing, like what's just like a final thought that we can share with our audience about this whole thing? This whole process, the rollout, everything.
They should know that we're thinking about them throughout the whole entire process. We're not just thinking about ourselves, we're thinking about the entire community. From the title of the film to wanting to show it to the community, we want to organize around it. We want to bring it to them.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, know that they're in community with us and we are in community with them.
I love that. Thank you. Do we want to plug? Did you want to say something, Julia?
I was just gonna add to Nat's point that I think something that's been really exciting with the rollout is focusing on community screenings in different ways that we can do that in 2026. And some of that is live and in person, but some of it's also online, like we've been doing. And so if anyone would like to see the film, it will be out on Kinema online and able to be rented and viewed pretty soon, maybe by the time this podcast comes out, but if not, relatively soon afterwards. And then you can also organize a screening through that site. And I think something that's really important to me as a filmmaker, and definitely for this film, is just being able to use the film as a tool for whoever's in it. Otherwise, what are we doing? This should be a conversation starter for whoever, would like to have that conversation. So it's available. It will be available on Kinema for that. And you'll be able to set up your own screenings and events. And if that's something that you'd like to do.
Awesome.
I'd like to say that I feel really honored to have had my story shared and Nat's story shared. And there are so many wonderful stories by sex workers that I would love to see immortalized in such a beautiful way. And I really hope that more filmmakers like Julia keep looking into this topic and keep trying to create humane portraits of us that really show who we are. And yeah, I really hope for that. And I'm really happy to be part of this one.
I love that.
This is so lucky to have these two. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I am. So, I don't have to tell you, but they are,
Yeah. Yes.
this
Cream of the crop.
does not exist without
Yeah.
them. And
I know.
if you have a more boring person, sorry, no.
No boring people.
No boring people.
Got it.
Yeah, they're cheesy, but they're like, I'm like, I want to be them.
Awesome.
Very inspiring.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And I think we did a great job. We made it happen despite
We did it.
the things that we went through. We did it. And we're here. And today is a great day. Today is International Sex Workers' Rights Day. It's March 3rd, 2026. We have a streaming tonight. We have more streamings coming out. So keep an eye out for new streamings, including one coming up with YAS Work. Thank you so much for tuning in and for listening. And we will see you next time. Bye.
YAS Podcast began as YAS, a stripper podcast, with original hosts A.M. Davies, Onyx Sachi, Gigi Holiday, and Daisy Ducati. Visit yaspodcast.com to learn about our hosts, our story, and comb through our archives of transcripts. You'll also find episodes as far back as 2020. That's yaspodcast.com. YAS Podcast is a part of YAS Network, a collection of podcasts created through YAS Work.